Political philosophy, or political theory, is the study of topics such as politics, liberty, justice, property, rights, law, and the enforcement of a legal code by authority. What they are, why they are needed, what, if anything, makes a government legitimate, what rights and freedoms it should protect and why, what form it should take and why, what the law is, and what duties citizens owe to a legitimate government, if any, and when it may be legitimately overthrown, if ever. In a vernacular sense, the term political philosophy often refers to a general view, or specific ethic, political belief or attitude, about politics, synonymous to the term political ideology. Political philosophy is considered by some to be a subdiscipline of political science. However, the name generally attributed to this form of political inquiry is political theory, a discipline which has a closer methodology to the theoretical fields in the social sciences, like economic theory, than to philosophical argumentation, like that of moral philosophy or aesthetics. History. Ancient philosophies. Ancient China. Chinese political philosophy dates back to the Spring and Autumn period, specifically with Confucius in the 6th century BC. Chinese political philosophy was developed as a response to the social and political breakdown of the country characteristic of the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period. The major philosophies during the period, Confucianism, legalism, Mohism, agrarianism and Taoism, each had a political aspect to their philosophical schools. Philosophers such as Confucius, Mencius, and Mozi focused on political unity and political stability as the basis of their political philosophies. Confucianism advocated a hierarchical, meritocratic government based on empathy, loyalty, and interpersonal relationships. Legalism advocated a highly authoritarian government based on draconian punishments and laws. Mohism advocated a communal, decentralized government centered on frugality and asceticism. The agrarians advocated a peasant utopian communalism and egalitarianism. Taoism advocated a proto-anarchism. Legalism was the dominant political philosophy of the Qin dynasty, but was replaced by state Confucianism in the Han dynasty. Prior to China's adoption of communism, state Confucianism remained the dominant political philosophy of China up to the 20th century. Ancient Greece. Western political philosophy originates in the philosophy of ancient Greece, where political philosophy dates back to at least Plato. Ancient Greece was dominated by city-states, which experimented with various forms of political organization, grouped by Plato into 4 categories: timocracy, tyranny, democracy and oligarchy. One of the first, extremely important classical works of political philosophy is Plato's Republic, which was followed by Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and Politics. Roman political philosophy was influenced by the Stoics, including the Roman statesman Cicero. Stoicism from Zeno. Ancient India. Indian political philosophy evolved in ancient times and demarcated a clear distinction between nation and state, religion and state. The constitutions of Hindu states evolved over time and were based on political and legal treatises and prevalent social institutions. The institutions of state were broadly divided into governance, administration, defense, law and order. The Prime Minister headed the Committee of Ministers along with head of executive. Chanakya. 4th century BC. Indian political philosopher. The Arthashastra provides an account of the science of politics for a wise ruler, policies for foreign affairs and wars, the system of a spy state and surveillance and economic stability of the state. Chanakya quotes several authorities including Brihaspati, Ushanas, Prashatasarmanu, Parasara, and Ambi, and described himself as a descendant of a lineage of political philosophers, with his father Chanakya being his immediate predecessor. Another influential extant Indian treatise on political philosophy is the Sukra Niti. An example of a code of law in ancient India is the Manusmriti or Laws of Manu. Medieval Christianity. St. Augustine. The early Christian philosophy of Augustine of Hippo was heavily influenced by Plato. A key change brought about by Christian thought was the moderation of the Stoicism and theory of justice of the Roman world, as well emphasis on the role of the state in applying mercy as a moral example. Augustine also preached that one was not a member of his or her city, but was either a citizen of the city of God or the city of man. Augustine's City of God is an influential work of this period that attacked the thesis, held by many Christian Romans, that the Christian view could be realized on earth. St. Thomas Aquinas meticulously dealt with the varieties of law. According to Aquinas, there are 4 kinds of law: eternal law, divine positive law, natural law, human law. Aquinas never discusses the nature or categorization of canon law. There is scholarly debate surrounding the place of canon law within the Thomistic jurisprudential framework. Aquinas was an incredibly influential thinker in the natural law tradition. Islamic Golden Age Mutazilite versus Asharite. The rise of Islam, based on both the Quran and Muhammad, strongly altered the power balances and perceptions of origin of power in the Mediterranean region. Early Islamic philosophy emphasized an inexorable link between science and religion, and the process of it had to find truth. In effect, all philosophy was political, as it had real implications for governance. This view was challenged by the rationalist Mutazilite philosophers, who held a more Hellenic view, reason above revelation, and as such are known to modern scholars as the first speculative theologians of Islam. They were supported by a secular aristocracy who sought freedom of action independent of the caliphate. By the late ancient period, however, the traditionalist, Asharite view of Islam had in general triumphed. According to the Asharites, reason must be subordinate to the Quran and the Sunnah. Islamic political philosophy was, indeed, rooted in the very sources of Islam, i.e., the Quran and the Sunnah, the words and practices of Muhammad, thus making it essentially theocratic. However, in the Western thought, it is generally supposed that it was a specific area peculiar merely to the great philosophers of Islam: Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Ibn Bajjah, Ibn Rushdi, and Ibn Khaldun. The political conceptions of Islam, such as Qudra, Sultan, Ummah, Semar, and even the core terms of the Quran, i.e., Ibadah, Din, Rabban Ilah, is taken as the basis of an analysis. Hence, not only the ideas of the Muslim political philosophers but also many other jurists and ulama posed political ideas and theories. For example, the ideas of the Khawarij in the very early years of Islamic history on Khilafah and Ummah, or that of Shia Islam on the concept of Imamah, are considered proofs of political thought. The clashes between the Ehli Sunnah and Shia in the 7th and 8th centuries had a genuine political character. Ibn Khaldun, the 14th century Arab scholar Ibn Khaldun, is considered one of the greatest political theorists. The British philosopher-anthropologist Ernest Gellner considered Ibn Khaldun's definition of government an institution which prevents injustice other than such as it commits itself, the best in the history of political theory. For Ibn Khaldun, government should be restrained to a minimum, for as a necessary evil, it is the constraint of men by other men. Medieval Europe. Medieval political philosophy in Europe was heavily influenced by Christian thinking. It had much in common with the Mutazilite Islamic thinking in that the Roman Catholics, though subordinating philosophy to theology, did not subject reason to revelation, but in the case of contradictions, subordinated reason to faith, as the Asharite of Islam. The scholastics, by combining the philosophy of Aristotle with the Christianity of St. Augustine, emphasized the potential harmony inherent in reason and revelation. Perhaps the most influential political philosopher of medieval Europe was St. Thomas Aquinas, who helped reintroduce Aristotle's works, which had only been transmitted to Catholic Europe through Muslim Spain, along with the commentaries of Averroes. Aquinas's use of them set the agenda, for scholastic political philosophy dominated European thought for centuries, even unto the Renaissance. Medieval political philosophers, such as Aquinas in Summa Theologica, developed the idea that a king who is a tyrant is no king at all and could be overthrown. Magna Carta, viewed by many as a cornerstone of Anglo-American political liberty, explicitly proposes the right to revolt against the ruler for justice sake. Other documents similar to Magna Carta are found in other European countries such as Spain and Hungary. European Renaissance. During the Renaissance, secular political philosophy began to emerge after about a century of theological political thought in Europe, while the Middle Ages did see secular politics in practice under the rule of the Holy Roman Empire. The academic field was wholly scholastic and therefore Christian in nature. Niccolò Machiavelli. One of the most influential works during this burgeoning period was Niccolò Machiavelli's The Prince, written between 1511 to 12 and published in 1532, after Machiavelli's death. That work, as well as the Discourses, a rigorous analysis of the classical period, did much to influence modern political thought in the West. A minority interpreted The Prince as a satire meant to be given to the Medici after their recapture of Florence and their subsequent expulsion of Machiavelli from Florence. Though the work was written for the de' Medici family in order to perhaps influence them to free him from exile, Machiavelli supported the Republic of Florence rather than the oligarchy of the de' Medici family. At any rate, Machiavelli presents a pragmatic and somewhat consequentialist view of politics, whereby good and evil are mere means used to bring about an end, i.e., the secure and powerful state. Thomas Hobbes, well known for his theory of the social contract, goes on to expand this view at the start of the 17th century during the English Renaissance. Although neither Machiavelli nor Hobbes believed in the divine right of kings, they both believed in the inherent selfishness of the individual. It was necessarily this belief that led them to adopt a strong central power as the only means of preventing the disintegration of the social order. European Enlightenment. During the Enlightenment period, new theories about what the human was and is and about the definition of reality and the way it was perceived, along with the discovery of other societies in the Americas, and the changing needs of political societies led to new questions and insights by such thinkers as Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Montesquieu and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. These theorists were driven by two basic questions. 1. By what right or need do people form states? And 2. What the best form for a state could be. These fundamental questions involved a conceptual distinction between the concepts of state and government. It was decided that state would refer to a set of enduring institutions through which power would be distributed and its use justified. The term government would refer to a specific group of people who occupied the institutions of the state, and create the laws and ordinances by which the people, themselves included, would be bound. This conceptual distinction continues to operate in political science, although some political scientists, philosophers, historians and cultural anthropologists have argued that most political action in any given society occurs outside of its state, and that there are societies that are not organized into states that nevertheless must be considered in political terms. As long as the concept of natural order was not introduced, the social sciences could not evolve independently of theistic thinking. Since the Cultural Revolution of the 17th century in England, which spread to France and the rest of Europe, society has been considered subject to natural laws akin to the physical world. Political and economic relations were drastically influenced by these theories as the concept of the guild was subordinated to the theory of free trade, and Roman Catholic dominance of theology was increasingly challenged by Protestant churches subordinate to each nation-state, which also preached in the vulgar or native language of each region. However, the Enlightenment was an outright attack on religion, particularly Christianity. The most outspoken critic of the Church in France was François-Marie Arouet de Voltaire, a representative figure of the Enlightenment. After Voltaire, religion would never be the same again in France. In the Ottoman Empire, these ideological reforms did not take place, and these views did not integrate into common thought until much later. As well, there was no spread of this doctrine within the New World and the advanced civilizations of the Aztec, Maya, Inca, Mohican, Delaware, Huron and especially the Iroquois. The Iroquois philosophy in particular gave much to Christian thought of the time and in many cases actually inspired some of the institutions adopted in the United States. For example, Benjamin Franklin was a great admirer of some of the methods of the Iroquois Confederacy, and much of early American literature emphasized the political philosophy of the natives. John Locke in particular exemplified this new age of political theory with his work Two Treatises of Government. In it Locke proposes a state of nature theory that directly complements his conception of how political development occurs and how it can be founded through contractual obligation. Locke stood to refute Sir Robert Filmer's paternally founded political theory in favor of a natural system based on nature in a particular given system. The theory of the divine right of kings became a passing fancy, exposed to the type of ridicule with which John Locke treated it. Unlike Machiavelli and Hobbes, but like Aquinas, Locke would accept Aristotle's dictum that man seeks to be happy in a state of social harmony as a social animal. Unlike Aquinas's preponderant view on the salvation of the soul from original sin, Locke believes man's mind comes into this world as tabula rasa. For Locke, knowledge is neither innate, revealed nor based on authority, but subject to uncertainty tempered by reason, tolerance and moderation. According to Locke, an absolute ruler as proposed by Hobbes is unnecessary, for natural law is based on reason and seeking peace and survival for man. Industrialization and the modern era. The Marxist critique of capitalism, developed with Friedrich Engels, was, alongside liberalism and fascism, one of the defining ideological movements of the 20th century. The Industrial Revolution produced a parallel revolution in political thought. Urbanization and capitalism greatly reshaped society. During this same period, the socialist movement began to form. In the mid-19th century, Marxism was developed, and socialism in general gained increasing popular support, mostly from the urban working class. Without breaking entirely from the past, Marx established principles that would be used by future revolutionaries of the 20th century, namely Vladimir Lenin, Mao Zedong, Ho Chi Minh, and Fidel Castro. Though Hegel's philosophy of history is similar to Immanuel Kant's, and Karl Marx's theory of revolution towards the common good is partly based on Kant's view of history, Marx declared that he was turning Hegel's dialectic, which was standing on its head, the right side up again. Unlike Marx, who believed in historical materialism, Hegel believed in the phenomenology of spirit. By the late 19th century, socialism and trade unions were established members of the political landscape. In addition, the various branches of anarchism, with thinkers such as Mikhail Bakunin, Pierre-Joseph Proudhon or Peter Kropotkin, and syndicalism also gained some prominence. In the Anglo-American world, anti-imperialism and pluralism began gaining currency at the turn of the 20th century. World War I was a watershed event in human history, changing views of governments and politics. The Russian Revolution of 1917 brought communism, and in particular the political theory of Leninism, but also on a smaller level Luxemburgism, on the world stage. At the same time, social democratic parties won elections and formed governments for the first time, often as a result of the introduction of universal suffrage. However, a group of Central European economists led by Austrian school economists Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich Hayek identified the collectivist underpinnings to the various new socialist and fascist doctrines of government power as being different brands of political totalitarianism.